I'll call this meeting to order. All rise, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you and good evening. We have a visitor here tonight, and she has another meeting, so we're going to go right to Diane. Diane?
Thank you. Council, I'm here tonight as your representative to ACTR, which I still go, and thank you very much for that position. I just wanted to come and thank you very much for the line item in the budget, which included the funds for the ACTR service this coming year. So just might like to express my thank you.
Any questions of Diane about ACTR? Any changes, upcoming changes or route changes? Everything's...
It's so far, it's working very well. I'm hearing very positive feedback from people within the community, and even last night from several people at the Strawberry Fest indicated to me how much it's meant to them to be able to ride the bus to work and back and forth. And now they have this little bus group that they, little group that they've even actually gone out afterwards. So it's catching on. So thank you. I'm going to run, though. I just wanted to say thank you, and I'm going to head out to another meeting.
We totally understand. Have fun at your meeting.
All right.
Thank you.
All. Bye.
Our next visitor hasn't arrived yet, but we'll divert back from the agenda. Tony
Stanings is supposed to be.
There's a man in a suit standing in front of City Hall.
Well, I know that my, I know what my email said.
My phone won't work out of here. My phone won't work out of here. Wait a minute, I
Should
missed
we
the
call the
call.
police and tell them to go out front and send them down? I was going to stop and ask them, and I thought, well,
Who's got coverage? We're supposed to turn these off. Who's got coverage?
I do.
All right, let me give you a cell phone number here. There's David.
What's your stand dial?
I gotta find out where it is.
Wait, oh, you have Tony's cell?
Yeah, I do.
Hello?
Somewhere in here. I wanna find it. 978 335 978
Right.
335 2471 335, excuse me. 2471.
He's just swirled up his eye.
No, it didn't work.
It's done.
No, you get too many numbers.
What's that?
Gold car with government plates, just,
Okay.
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 He probably,
that's him.
it's Tony? All right. Okay, I'll ask for a motion to pass the minutes on the budget workshop and city council meeting for June 8th.
I made said motion.
Second?
And Lowell seconds it. Let's open it for corrections, omission, or errors. Anybody, any comments? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Okay, we'll start with the warrants have been around and signed, we did the minutes. Any questions on the, go ahead,
Sorry,
Steve.
it was Dylan Joni where it said the sewer wasn't able to run it to two lots, it was only the one lot where the trailers were Teresa. And the sewer line you mentioned,
If you're into the bourgeois.
yeah.
Tap on.
Okay, we gotta rescind that.
After city manager's report, probably third or fourth line up.
Well, I think actually, Zig, I think in 1977, there wasn't enough money to extend sewer to your house and to your
Oh, okay,
trailer
the
lot,
sewer.
all right?
All right,
And, because obviously subsequent, later later, your house is tied in and the other lot isn't.
Right,
So
well,
I
there's
think
two
that-
lots, there's 4 other lots there too. I mean, 3 other lots beside the trailer. There was, remember all those lots, I had those lots?
Well, I just know in
That was in
1907, that's, that's correct. That
Okay.
they're,
That you weren't able to get on the sewer, and neither was your lot.
Plus I have 3, those other ones back there.
Yeah, but at the time, you were saying that your
Right.
house and them couldn't go on because they didn't
They
extend it
ran out of money
down.
right there, period.
Right.
That was it for anybody.
Okay, so are the minutes
Leave
correct
it the
as
way it is.
written?
All right.
The minutes are correct as written, so the vote stands. Okay. All right, and so now we will go back and welcome our visitor or visitors. Tony, welcome.
Well, good to be here. Mike, as you probably have heard by now, there's been some adjustments to the contract. The bottom line is that there's not huge adjustments in terms of the management entity because the 2 entities that have been there historically over the past 5 years is Rescare and Alutech. Rescare has been the prime contractor, which means they had the majority of the contract in place and they subcontracted the balance of services to Alutech. This is Mr. Bob Savachak. He's Vice President of Alutech Youth Services.
Welcome.
And has a very extensive history and involvement with the Job Corps program, going back many years, including serving as a regional director and as the national deputy director for all country. So he brings a lot of experience in understanding about the program and what we do. Effective on Thursday, Alutech will become the prime contractor and Rescare moves into a subcontractual relationship. And Bob is here if you have any questions, or he'd be glad to talk to you about what Alutech is, what its involvement is.
We'd welcome any information you'd be willing to share with us.
Sure. Well, good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for inviting us. Alutech LLC is a native corporation from Alaska, and so I've just come in from Anchorage for this transition activities. Alutech LLC is primarily a defense contractor in military construction projects, homeland security activities, and information technology. Another division within Alutech is for youth services, and so we are the prime operator currently for 3 Job Corps centers, the Detroit Center, the Flint, Michigan Center, and now Northlands. The reason for this change is that the federal government, as you may know, has looked to increase the number of small businesses that operate all their programs or what they contract with. And all executive agencies have a goal of roughly about 28% of their contracting dollars has to go to small business. As a result, when this center came up for rebid after its normal 5-year cycle, it was put out as a small business set-aside. Since we were already a small business, minority-owned business, we were able to go ahead and bid as the prime contractor. And we were successful in the bid, and Rescare remains our partner on a long-term basis. So from the standpoint of general operations, there really isn't going to be a significant programmatic change at this point. 121 positions remain in place at the center, and 280 students as a capacity to be served. As a result of this transition, less than 5% of the staff were not retained. So there really won't be a dramatic changeover as a result of all this. I will say that Alutech LLC, as a general enterprise, part of the Vergennes Native Corporation, employs over 7,000 people and has about $800 million in sales in all its subsidiary operations, which are not limited just to the United States. They're also in Korea, Japan, and other locations around the world. So that's Alutech's story in a nutshell. We're glad to be here. We've been here since 2005, and we look forward to having a very cooperative relationship with the city of Vergennes.
Very good. I'd open it up to any questions if the council has any.
Joe Klopfenstein. Is this the subsidiary that runs these job boards? Is it a for-profit? How does it?
They're all for profit. And Rescare is a for-profit company.
Okay.
It's the largest health services, private health service provider of services in the United States. Alutic LLC is a for-profit enterprise. Of the 124 Job Corps centers, only about 80 are operated by a federal agency, the U.S. Forest Service. And there's a handful of nonprofit entities like the YWCA operates the Los Angeles Job Corps Center. But roughly 85 Job Corps centers are all contracted out for-profit companies.
And I'm the newest member of the city council, so I'm not real familiar with the sort of the intricacies, but I'm curious, are any direct administrative responsibilities being shifted to Alaska, and how's that going to impact the day-to-day operations of the Job Corps Center?
All companies that operate any centers will have a centralized location for human resources, legal services, accounting provisions, but as far as the employment level at this center, it really doesn't change at all. I think under the previous contract, there might have been 122 positions. They're currently going to be about 121.2. The normal administrative functions that any company would have would really be no different from when Rescare operated. They're based in Louisville, Kentucky. We just happen to have a corporate central office in Anchorage. We have a youth services office in Flint, Michigan, and in Denver, Colorado.
And one last quick question. How long have the other two Job Corps centers that you run, how long have you had responsibility for those?
We've operated the Flint Center since March 1st, 2004, and the Detroit Center since October 2008.
Thanks.
Sure.
Any other questions?
Another question, couple of questions.
Sure.
City Manager Mel Hawley, good to meet you. The lease between the State of Vermont and the United States Department of Labor expires June 30th, 2013.
Correct.
And I'm not sure whether or not the current lease has a provision for a purchase option. I know that one or some of the earlier leases had that provision, and I understand that that's not a relationship that a contractor has with the state of Vermont, but
right.
You know, it's a relationship that the federal government has. What is the? I know in the past contracts they used to be let for 2 or 3 years, and then there were a couple of renewal periods. What's the status? I've lost track of it, to be honest with you, because I've been away for about 10 years until I returned a couple of years ago. So I'm just curious as to the status of this contract, which apparently got reassigned, if you will. Are you in an option year at this point, or in the?
No,
was this part of a rebid year?
This was competitively reprocured as a new contract.
This year,
Yes.
effective.
So, July 1st, this Thursday. And it's for 2 years and 3 one-year options. This is the standard contract that the Department of Labor issues for all contract-operated centers. So Rescare completed the 5-year cycle. They had all their option years renewed. And as the procurement came up, it was converted from a full and open competition to a small business set-aside. So once you do that, it changes the dynamics of what companies can bid under what circumstances and so forth. Rescare could not bid, since they are a large business, for the renewal, given the procurement status. So in the end, essentially what we're doing really is switching hats. We become the prime operator for the beginning cycle of 5 years, if all subsequent option years are picked up. It's a base 2-year contract with 3 one-year options.
Yeah, okay. I'm just curious. Was there multiple bidders?
We are not privy to that.
Okay.
The Department of Labor doesn't release who were the other bidders on a particular contract. We don't have that information.
I guess what surprises me just a little bit is the fact that, I'm just going to say that it's not directed at you. It's that the fact that the lease between the state of Vermont and the United States Department of Labor terminates June 30, 2013. Right. I just find it a little puzzling that you have been granted a 2-year contract with option years which go beyond 2013. I just find that a little puzzling.
I don't think that that's puzzling at all, in the sense that if the option years, just as they are, option years are not picked up, they coincide exactly with the expiration date of the lease.
if they aren't picked up, but if their option, whose option is it? It's not
Well,
yours?
Clearly, it's the government's.
Okay, it's the government's
It's
option.
it's a
Okay.
government-issued contract by the U.S. Department of Labor, so if they choose to pick up the option years, that's
Okay.
at their election. It's not certainly the contractor's responsibility for that. We fully expect, based on our performance at other centers, that would be the case. To go to your original question, though, about the lease, that is something that certainly is going to be of significant interest, not only to the Department of Labor about continuing to have a Job Corps Center here in Vergennes, the state of Vermont as to whether or not they're going to have a responsible governmental agency that's going to maintain the center, and obviously for the city as to whether or not the center will remain in this community. I would fully expect, since we're going to be entering into a facility survey on July the 12th, that's going to be a very significant topic as to whether or not the government is going to be able to enter into negotiations with the state for a long-term lease agreement. And that remains to be seen, but that's certainly all under the Department of Labor's control with the state as to whether or not they can reach an agreement.
Yeah, probably everybody at the table understands why I'm asking this question, and because I was here in 1978 when Job Corps came to town, and there was, in essence, a host town agreement, if you will, that was created in the form of a memorandum that was attached to the original 1978 lease of the state of Vermont and the United States Department of Labor. And there was a provision in there that the city would receive compensation under some type of a formula, all right? And what happened is that when that lease terminated and a new lease got written, the new lease did not have a memorandum as it related to paying municipal services. And I can tell you, for this particular property owner and taxpayer and city manager, I strongly feel that the rug got swept out from underneath of the city of Vergennes, and that was not inadvertently left out, but purposely left out. Okay, so the point is, I've marked my calendar for June 30, 2013, and I would hope that before the state of Vermont starts thinking about leasing that facility again to the federal government, it would take into account the original host agreement that this city was offered, if you will, for welcoming Job Corps to its community back in 1978. The city of Vergennes, upgraded its police department, upgraded its fire department because of Job Corps being here. And then to find out, 15 years later, for the federal government to be saying, we don't pay taxes, basically passing that burden on to the taxpayers of Vergennes. It's very obvious to me, that has left a bad taste in many people's mouths, all right? And, it's nothing against your program, but the taxpayers of Vergennes, which are already paying for Job Corps, are actually paying twice, in my opinion, because they're having to, through property taxes, pay for services that are being provided to Job Corps that Job Corps isn't paying for. And I guess what I would hope is that there was a time when the contractors, when the city was negotiating those municipal services contractors, the contractors actually came to the side of the city saying, we need these services, and therefore we understand that we need to pay for those services. We would hope that current contractors and future contractors would understand that obligation to the taxpayers of the city of Vergennes.
The only thing I can tell you for sure, this is all out of the contractor's hands, but this is a unique set of circumstances that existed previously. As Tony mentioned, I had some responsibility in the national office for Job Corps, and there weren't many, if any, other centers that had to pay for police and fire protection, regardless of what their location was. Now, many are in urban areas, like St. Louis, South Bronx, as two, for instance, Brooklyn, New Jersey. But there are many in rural communities as well. But again, that's going to be something that the Department of Labor will have to consider as to whether or not they want to enter into a long-term agreement. Regrettably, when we took over, when ResCare took over in July of 2005, there was some uncertainty as to whether or not this agreement would stay in place as to whether or not the Department of Labor would continue to make payments. And when the decision was made that they would not, they made a provision. They told the operator, ResCare, at that point, to be prepared to close the center. That hopefully won't be part and parcel of any discussion that is going forward, but that did occur. And we'll have to wait and see as to what the lease agreement is, if in fact it's entered into and agreed to, and what the provisions are with the state relative to the city of Vergennes.
And do we have any way of getting involved in this? And,
Well, I think that's where, I think our representatives and senators, that's our voice to Montpelier. And, the thing that is, obviously is upsetting is that in 1978, when this lease was written, it had that provision in it, okay? And then after 15 years, let's say, or 20 years, in 1998, when the new lease got written, it just came to City Hall. It got recorded in the land records. The Job Corps payments came every month, no different than they had been in the last 15 years. And then 5 years later, all of a sudden, somebody claims that that the federal government, this is taxation in the federal government. So the point is that had we known that lease did not have that provision, or had we known that 5 years later the federal government was going to take that position, I think that the city of Vergennes certainly would have taken a stance back in 1996, 1997. And to me, the state of Vermont, and I'm not criticizing you folks whatsoever. I'm saying that when the state of Vermont created that original agreement, there was in essence a host town agreement. And the renewed lease did not have that host town agreement provision whereby we would be compensated. And I just don't want that to happen again. That is just not, that just is not fair to the citizens of Vergennes.
Okay. Well taken. David?
I think that, to talk a little bit more about Mel's point, we certainly, the center has historically provided a lot to the city in terms of an employment base, the urban forestry program. And this discussion here is not in any way to mitigate any of the positive contributions. And ResCare has certainly been a good corporate neighbor to the city, and I'm sure that when you're switching hats, you'll do the same, and things will continue. I'd like to point out Tony has done an excellent job managing the facility. I know that he's been very, very proactive in terms of his communication with the council and Mel as city manager. So the discussion isn't relative to the operational aspects of the facility, but it is an issue. And it was a previous administration that essentially, for all intents and purposes, dropped the ball relative to this. And so we're sitting here today, and I've been on this council longer than anyone, and I think Mel and I probably have the keenest interest in seeing this thing resolved, in that both he and I, though we were much younger then, were probably as familiar with the process as anybody left in the city of Vergennes. What occurred back in '78, it was very, very clear to me there was a process by which the Department of Labor came to the city of Vergennes and gave us a sales pitch, essentially. My father was one of the individuals who was on that committee. He was Human Resource Director at Simmons at the time. So I'm pretty familiar relative to the discussions that occurred back then. And it is an issue from a practical perspective in that, we do have a responsibility as a governing body of the city to protect essentially the financial interests of the residents and the taxpayers. Essentially, what we have currently is that we have our municipal services are providing a service to a facility that is serving a very broad region of the northeastern United States. Tony's certainly done a good job in terms of increasing the both the stature of the center relative to the surrounding area, and probably within the Job Corps program as a whole. You see a lot more Vermonters involved in the program, but essentially what we're looking for is to revisit the issue relative to this agreement. And to kind of expand on what Mel said, we would look to you to be partners in that. We have a vested interest in seeing the facility stay here. You have a vested interest in seeing the facility stay here, because you're obviously, there's some level of profitability inherent in it, or wouldn't be here. And I'd like to think that the DOL has an interest in it as well. So going forward, when we're negotiating this thing in the state of Vermont, we'd really like to be on the same page in terms of partners. And we can maybe have a discussion later on at some point in terms of some of the missteps that occurred, essentially, both on the part of the city and on the part of the administration that was in place at Job Corps when this thing came all unraveled. And I'm confident that there's a way for us to fix it.
The Department of Labor is certainly interested and actually solicits from communities now an invitation to come when they expand the program. There's 5 centers that are currently been constructed, and a solicitation went out, and this has been the process really almost since 1989, so this would predate the discussion, Mr. Hawley, that you brought up relative to 1978, where an RFP is issued and they ask communities, do you want a Job Corps center to be there? And there's a sharing of interest, obviously, whether there's a youth unemployment rate to be served or training provided to increase the workforce system for training that hasn't been met. And so that has been the Department of Labor's position over the years. So in fact, a new center is going to be constructed in New Hampshire. A new center has been constructed in Florida, Milwaukee, and Iowa, as well as now Wyoming. And there'll be a Job Corps center in every state. Now, some states have more than one Job Corps center. There certainly, from my understanding, and to a certain extent, the center operator has to be neutral in this, in the sense that the Department of Labor has every intention of trying to negotiate a lease and that they would be here on a long-term basis. I think the other thing that has to be considered is there's a definite need for new facilities out at that center. The dormitories are very old. They need continual upkeep. And I think without a long-term lease agreement that's satisfactory to all parties, there's probably not going to be a capital investment made in improving that facility. And so there's other considerations here that would benefit the students, would benefit the long-term relationship of having a center in this community and sustaining itself in the program. Job Corps has been in existence for 45 years. There's bipartisan support, whether you're Republican or Democrat, to continue the program. So the program's base of support, its funding, doesn't appear in serious jeopardy. Where they have local issues that have to be resolved to everybody's mutual satisfaction, certainly something has to be considered. But I'm not aware of any interest on the Department of Labor not to have a center here. And I think there are some benefits once a lease on a long-term basis can be entered into, that hopefully some capital improvements will be considered for that center. But particularly when you look, I think the newest building on the center was constructed in probably 1964. And most of the buildings were constructed prior to 1938. And again, we're going through a facility survey process July 12th that will determine what are the repairs that are needed to maintain the center, and then also to come up with perhaps a long-range plan for replacement of buildings that have probably well exceeded their life expectancy for the intended purpose that they're now used for.
is the assessment done by your team? Or
No, it's done by a third party that's hired. It's under contract to the Department of Labor that does these assessments at all the facilities, generally on a 3-year cycle. And Northlands just happens to be coming up on July the 12th.
Do you know if the state is aware of that? Are they involved in any way?
They're not involved in the assessment of the facility because DOL would ultimately have the responsibility to pay for the repairs and the upkeep and make any commitment for anything that would be done on a long-term basis.
Yes. I'm familiar with that agreement because my day job is working for the state. Okay. Any other questions? Gentlemen, if there aren't, we want to thank you very much for coming up and listening to us tonight and hearing what you had to say and hearing what we had to say as well. And we look forward to a strong future. Like David said, Tony, you are a real asset to the program over there. You do well with the students and looking forward to working very closely together to our mutual benefit. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Okay, we're gonna go to item 4A. Whoops, no, we're gonna go to budgets. We didn't talk about budgets. Not the
right.
bottom part, but the upper. We wanna hold that until the end?
I'll hold it, Mike, yeah,
Okay.
I'm fine.
All right, well, then we're gonna go right to committee reports. Gonna start with Chris. Are you getting feedback from any of the residents about how the market's doing? Any comments?
I have heard that they like the variety, that obviously there's more up there. I did see the signs out on Route 7 this last Thursday. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, did you? Those darn kids.
As long as they
No,
don't
I've
get
heard
picked up and
positive
stolen.
about it, about the market.
Eric's horse is definitely bringing people in.
The what?
The horse,
Horse.
Eric's horse.
Yeah. I did talk to Eric. We were down in Middlebury a week ago Saturday and stopped by their farmer's market to try to pick up some business cards and get some ideas to offer. And I struck up a conversation with Eric, and he's looking for a little something more substantial to tie that horse down into. And
Yes, his
so,
his first attempt apparently wasn't there, and we'll work with him, Mike, to come
Yeah.
up with something that keeps the horse where it's supposed to be.
yeah.
You know, I'll bet back in 1838, there was all kinds of hitching posts out there, but apparently those are gone.
Terry's got one.
There, we'll go take, I think it's within the city right away, so
It
we
is.
can just grab
Yeah,
that.
yeah. We'll just have to move it. Relocate it. You probably have to fight Terry tooth and nail to get it, but that's okay. All right, anything else, Chris?
No.
Okay, thank you. David?
We've got a couple more people who are now acting as supervisors of the skateboard park. We also have an individual, a young man who's come forward who will be offering skateboard lessons in conjunction with the summer tennis program. That's going to begin on Monday, and they'll run about from 8 to noon, and we'll see how that goes, how long it'll run, depending on the level of interest.
It's going to start the 4th of July?
5th,
5th of July, excuse me.
Monday.
Okay.
Run from about 8:30 to noon.
I was approached by a citizen just last night, wanted to know what could be done to take the fence down. And-
Absolutely nothing.
And the other question they threw at me is, you know, what works over in Bristol and why are we being so restrictive over here as far as supervisions? Are they doing something
Yeah.
different?
Well, what they're doing is Bristol, you know, and I just had this discussion today with somebody, you know, Bristol, Burlington, Talon Skate Park, all these other places, they're certainly free to do whatever they choose. Mel and I made the decision based on a discussion with our insurer, which is a league of cities and towns, that it's in our best interests to require the use of helmets and require supervision and have the facility locked when it is not supervised. And the reason for that is this, is that, that as the operator of that facility, we have a duty to mitigate the level of risk, just like you meet and everybody else does with regard to anything that we have insured. There's a common confusion with regard to insurance, and the confusion is that you have a loss, your insurer is gonna cover it. Not if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. So it was communicated to us by our insurer that that's what we needed to do. My assumption would be that Bristol, Burlington, and whoever else, if they took the time to investigate it, they would find a similar circumstance. There's enough of an issue relative to it being supervised with the facility being appropriately taken care of. You know, the kids are pretty good, but there's still a level of trash that needs to be picked up and that sort of thing. So that's really the issue, and I've explained it. You know, when people ask me, I say, hey, you know what? I'm an alderman in the city of Vergennes, not Bristol. Bristol can do as they choose, but operating that facility unsupervised and not requiring helmets would be like operating the pool without lifeguards and letting people that can't swim jump into the deep end. So.
Okay. One of my concerns is I'm just seeing more kids on skateboards on the roads and on the sidewalks, and so we just need to figure out something. But I agree with your supervision. I would suggest as soon and as much as you can, if they publicize a schedule, roster, send that to my other home address, email address.
Sure.
And we will put
get
that
it
on the
there.
website.
Okay. Yep.
And so
I-
people
I-
are looking to, that's gonna get communicated out, and that's not gonna be an easy job.
It's been an issue to a degree in terms of people's availability. You know, people obviously have jobs and other commitments and that sort of thing. And, you know, we've had, eventually, you know, Mel and I've had the discussion about combining, you know, the pool and the skate park and all those recreational
We've had
facilities
that.
under one entity, but it's not gonna occur this summer,
No, definitely not.
you know.
Not
So
with the-
we're plugging away at it.
One of the things that I'd ask Mel to do is the lights are on all day.
They just stay on?
They stay on, so can we put a photocell or something? Photocell's better because it can work with, you don't have to keep setting your timer back. But, yeah,
Yeah,
photocell
okay.
would be much better.
Yeah.
But if that's whatever, we can get to work.
You're saying they're left on all the time?
The spotlights, yeah.
Well, so I
Yeah.
gotta have a timer as opposed to a photocell.
Yeah.
Probably they may be on a photocell, I'll find out.
You
about
check that out,
Yeah.
please? Thank you. Randy, anything to report from the seniors?
Yes. I actually did a project for the seniors and provided them with a craft so they could have a craft day last Tuesday.
Excellent.
Also went to the community liaison meeting for Northlands last Thursday. And Lynn Donnelly actually was given us a plaque for her job with one of the students there.
Oh, super.
So it's been they had an active, and I met the new operator, well, the person that's gonna be taking over, the Lutex chief, last Thursday too.
Very good. Suggestion, with all the time it took to put the snow shoveling together, can you start prodding and seeing if they're gonna offer that service again this year?
Yeah, I'll get a hold of Dale Nolan.
I wasn't gonna mention the name on camera, but, yeah, please see what you can do, start that, please.
Yep.
Ziggy, town meetings, anything to report?
No.
Who's having the next one? Who's up? When's the next meeting coming up? Ferrisburg is when? Or
Theirs is-
Canton?
Panton's is the same as
Yeah, we should go to Panton.
That's at
I mean,
6, right?
I have sent fire contract information to Panton, but I think we should follow up. It's easier for us to go to a meeting than for me to write a letter to them, so we should find out when their next meeting is.
I thought it was gonna, well, usually it runs the same time we have ours, only they have it at 6 o'clock.
I'd like to be on the bandwagon. I'd like to actually go. I'm in PT for some shoulder issues, but, and it runs fairly, it runs that, usually I get out by 6. But I'd like to join whoever wants to go, and,
Yeah, I'll
but
find out when
I wanna
that
hit
is.
them all.
Well, as far as I know of, last week Sue was sick most of the week, so it was closed, and then this week she's not open till the 1st.
I'm little less interested in going to Addison just because they're far out and there's less, it's more the Waltham and the adjoining towns to the city. That's, but.
So you won't be
yeah.
able to get that information till after, till the first. Okay.
Okay, good deal. Mr. Joe, thank you very much for taking the responsibility. I don't know if the council knows, but we've asked Joe to take on an assignment, and I'll let him talk about it in just a minute. It's part of our agenda to come up with writing some new policies for the pool, something that we didn't cover and we're running into. Joe, you want to go into it a little bit?
Just that Mike asked me to establish some criteria or work with some people to establish some criteria for managing requests for pool passes, for free pool passes, or and we don't really have a policy for that right now. So I've asked a couple of people to work with me on getting that together, and I'll have some comments later on, but we'll certainly have something in place by next year.
Anything else you'd like to offer on?
I don't think so at this
Okay,
point.
you're working on an article for the City Voice?
Yes.
Very good. Lowell, what number fishing derby was this? I told you there would be a written test.
I failed.
Number 27.
Really?
This is the 27th. Yes. You do know how many kids were there,
I do.
right?
I do.
There was a little under 300.
No, actually.
They had over 300 registrations
They-
and about 10 no-shows.
Okay, really? Because there was 312 that ended up registering, so it was, yeah. Last year, they actually had 298, so.
We heard 304, so
Well,
somewhere in there,
boy.
somewhere in there is a good number, 300.
Who will give, how much you give? Have to get Mr. Michael come up and do a little auctioneering for us. Okay, we're still having a problem with some adults wanting to take charge and keeping boats away. And what I would offer to you, if you assign, or take the assignment for next year, to talk to the committee about creating a document that the adults all sign after they read it, stating that they won't mess with the boats. They will cohabitat. Could have been done, and the boaters are good to work with. You just gotta talk to them. There was one probably 40 or 46-foot yacht that came in, and there was a discussion on which side it was gonna park on. Finally, the guy got fed up and just into the dock, into the main dock on the McDonough side. Says, you gotta let me park somewhere, so. But they will work with you. And, so the police were called 3 times to go down and have some discussion with some individuals, but
The kids are great.
the kids are great.
Yeah.
I had a blast.
What was the issue?
Holding boats at bay and some language issues. That's why I say we gotta come up with something.
Code of conduct.
Code of conduct, whatever you want to call it, but the kids they had a blast. They got wet. We were hoping some lights would come on the falls. That didn't happen very well. So we're still working on that. But a great time was had by all, and we need to consider in the July meeting about maybe showing our thanks, either a certificate of appreciation to all the people that were on a committee, but we need to do something.
I asked Michelle Sullivan to give me a full list of all the participants from the council.
There was the committee, and then they asked for a bunch of helpers. It was a big turnout. Yep, so that was good.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
On our docks, especially on this side,
This side being the
Not your
McDonough side.
no, the other, this side.
We are on the side.
Oh, okay, well, the other side then.
Falls Park side.
I keep thinking where I live.
Your side of the river, okay.
When people are out on the docks fishing, like in this fishing derby, do they have to have life jackets on?
No,
They don't.
it's not mandatory.
It is not.
No?
No, in the derby it is.
Was it?
They had signs right up.
Yeah.
Life jackets required if kids were on a dock.
I had a couple people
And we're
question
offshore.
me about
I
it, so I didn't know.
can guarantee you that there were some kids on that dock that didn't have life jackets on.
Well, that was a problem, one of the problems they were having, because they take them off, or they didn't go on there, and they had to,
I was down
I
there.
don't know, Brad, Walt, did you hear anything about that? No.
Do a good job, Lowell. I think
He was
Lowell ought to do it next year.
He was actually out of state, that's why I was picking on him so bad.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But, you know, stop down, watch them fish, a lot of, there was, we'll get a full report, because we're talking thousands of dollars in prizes. So, and I went down for the awards ceremonies, and what they call ugly sticks, it's a fishing pole. There was ugly sticks with every trophy that went out, a tackle box with tackle in it, you name it. It was really done up right.
Somebody that came from as far away as Connecticut, I'd heard.
There's one woman that did fall, and they took her to the hospital. She bumped her head. She is from Bennington, and their kids have been coming up for years. There is usually one that comes down from Montreal for this. And they even had like a graduation for one person that won a prize, because will be the last year that she can fish in the contest. But there's other kids that have come up through the program that were actually there helping.
One of the
They
grand
couldn't
prize
fish.
winners from last year was
Yep.
the Sharon boy was.
Yep.
did
And
that.
Old White was there with his boat and took a bunch of kids out on it. Of course, they won the LCI, so. But they had door prizes, they had raffles, all sorts of, I don't know who won
Last
what.
year, my grandson, his job was to bait some of the hooks for the little kids,
Yep.
because some of them wouldn't touch it, but he did that all day, and I said, you didn't even fish? Nope. He said, I had fun.
I found it fun, and there was one kid that got hung up on bottom, and I helped him pull the line in, and it ended up being a stick, and it broke off, and we pulled it in, and I says, you gonna throw it out? And he kinda looked at me, I said, you want me to throw it out for you? So, where you want it? We had fun. It was a lot of fun. Okay, how are we coming with the rest of those 50-foot docks?
Well, I don't want to mention anything to Tony, because Tony's not going to build them, but there has been a lack of communication between us and Job Corps, because Tony directed me to an individual, and we have all of the hardware, Mike, but we didn't purchase and we have all of the barrels, but we have not purchased any lumber, because they haven't scheduled us in. So I read your note there that you
Sneak it, huh?
you can, yeah, I did. And so if we want to, approach this in a different direction, it's fine with me. I think what happens in defense of Job Corps, something like this relies on their building trades division, all right? And of course, what happens is that they do a lot of work on center, and therefore, when we get these requests, they would love to do things that we request from them to do, but they have other priorities in front of us, and so we just never made it to the top of their list, Mike. So at least for this season, if we have to go in a different direction, we can do that.
I think I could come up with, if we really want to get those in the water this year or not, we can make a decision. Boat traffic, I haven't checked with Matt, but I don't think it's strong yet.
Yeah, okay.
But if we really came to push to shove, and I could find time, I built them for a number of years when I worked for the Creative Carpentry, so I know how to throw them together, and I think I could scrounge up 4 or 5 guys to put them together.
Yeah, we created the materials list,
You got a bunch?
but we didn't purchase the materials because we wanted to purchase it and land it.
Oh, you gotta-
there in the same step, and so it just never.
It's gotta be,
happened, so.
yeah, you're gonna use pressure treated?
I believe that's what
Yeah.
they spec, yeah.
Yeah, you don't want it sitting around because it'll warp on you.
All right.
So, okay, see, you threw me off now, you read my
It's
note.
okay.
Okay, like I said, I got a little issue with my shoulder freezing up on me, and we're working that out. I'm hoping to still schedule a Cracker Barrel meeting, and I'm hoping to do that sometime in the month of July, around the middle of it. We're going to be having another haunted forest meeting coming up sometime in
July 21st.
July 21st, thank you. That's down at Falls Park, 6:30. So I'd like to see as many people that want to participate in this year's come down and see what we got. A few new ones have shown interest, and a lot of the old ones, they're still there. So it was a lot of fun last year. Lighting the falls has been a challenge. For the Basin Bash, it never happened. I'm quite embarrassed to say that, but they ran into some both electronic and technical issues that were squared away, and we've been batting it back and forth ever since. And of course, Marguerite's the one that wrote the contract with the people, and so I'm trying to keep her involved, and as of late, she went on vacation for this week, so I'm still emailing the guy almost on a daily basis as to tell him what's not happening and what needs to happen, and copying Marguerite. French Heritage Day is coming up on, we started on the 9th, and that's the VA, the meal up at the Opera House. That was extremely good. I went for my first one last year and definitely plan on going back this year, and hope as many can attend as possible. Of course, the big day itself on Saturday is on the 10th, on the park and all the other events that are happening throughout the town. A lot of stuff happening. And then we're also asked the city band to play at Falls Park, and they graciously accepted to do that. And I'm gonna need, I gotta talk to Joe to help get some information for me as to how many chairs I'm gonna need. I gotta figure a way to get them, and how many tents we need to set up. We have 2 tents that we could set up, and I'll talk to the city crew and tell them where they need to be set, but it's gonna be down on Falls Park side, down near the docks, but it's gonna be on a fairly level. So that's July 12th, and they'll start at 7 p.m. And I just need to know if you need any sort of electricity. There's outlets there, but we don't have any.
Sue has a battery-powered megaphone. Other than that, I mean, we use a microphone on the green, but it might be just as easy for her to bring her megaphone.
Okay.
I'll ask her. I'll see her this weekend at the fireworks.
Okay. Okay, that's right. Oh, and by all means, July 3rd, this weekend, Saturday night, fireworks. That'll be.
Virginia City Band will be playing in the Bristol Parade Saturday morning as well to help celebrate the birthday of the Bristol Band.
Oh,
so that's the
excellent.
first time we've done that.
Very good. Any other events happening around that people need to know about, want to share? If not, we're going to jump on out from committee reports. There's no one from the public here to offer it unless Andy would like to share, and he just says no. Okay. We'll go to old business, appointment to Development Review Board.
One thing, Mike, I have been in touch with one individual, and who's not the same person that you brought up, Zig, at the last meeting. I have not got around to calling him, but the individual that I spoke to wants to come to a meeting, not to your meeting, but to a DRB meeting before he agrees to be considered. I think he wants to have a better understanding of what that group does. The other thing, Mike, you and I spoke briefly, many of the folks that are on the terms of members of the DRB and the Planning Commission, I'll say half of them expire at the end of July of every year. So in talking to Mike, I think as opposed to taking any action on any new member right now, it would be, we need to take a look and see really where we're at with the other members, because some members may not wish to renew their term. So Mike's got some telephone calls to make and begging to do and in some instances. So we still do need some recruiting, all right? So if you folks do know anybody that might be a good candidate, there is one opening on the DRB currently. Hopefully that won't grow based on Mike's phone calls. And there's two openings on the Planning Commission. So we really do need to get both of those boards back to full by the 1st of August.
And we have one other recommendation. That
Yeah, there is one other, there's a recommendation that did come in for Planning Commission, so we still are a little short, but we really don't know how short we are until Mike makes some phone calls.
I have canvassed everybody, and I've heard back from Ziggy, and I've heard back from Chris. Chris doesn't know the person, Ziggy does. Joe doesn't, well, Randy doesn't, David doesn't. I don't know if it's something we can wait till our July meeting and act on it then. It's gonna be a lot closer to, I mean, we're not in a hurting situation at this point.
No.
I just don't wanna leave her in the lurch. It's too awful long, because it's, from what I'm hearing from the qualifications, she is highly qualified.
She seemed to me from the
Based-
times I've met with her.
She's being recommended by one of the commission members.
Chair, yeah,
The chair of the commission. So I wrote her a good write, and so I wouldn't have a problem. But let's table that part until we get closer and I can find out. We may want to realign something or change
One of the things that I know that we had done in the past, or not necessarily this council, but other councils had done, is to have an interview process with candidates. And I think that might be something that we revisit. And it wouldn't necessarily have to be the full council. It could be a small committee. Mel should certainly be on that committee because he has to interact with them on a regular basis. But I think that it's important that that before we appoint folks to that board, that we make sure that they have a clear understanding of what is involved with the board, and also to communicate clearly in terms of what the expectations are. I mean, there's a lot of people, and I was chair for years and had served on the board for years, and there's a lot of people that are that it's kind of like putting a square peg into a round hole to a degree. And I think that that we can potentially alleviate issues down the road in terms of just having an understanding up front in that, you know, what the expectations are relative to membership on both of those boards, in that we're not necessarily looking for somebody that has you know, experience or skill, but they at least have to have a level of aptitude and interest, and also an understanding of what it means to be on that board. And what it means is, in my opinion, that you have regulations that are adopted that have the force of law, and that you follow those regulations whether you agree with them or not, and that whether something is a good idea or you know, whether it's your personal opinion that something is good or bad, well, it's pretty simple, you know, relative to the DRB. If an application meets the regulations, it's approved. And if it doesn't meet the regulations, it's denied. And relative to the Planning Commission, that we get people on the board that understand that the regulations that they enact should be clear and understandable and follow state law. And that those regulations should not include a lot of language like should or encouraged or any of these other things, because from an applicant's process, and I've seen it not just in Vergennes but other places, as an applicant, one of the things that you want is a clearly understandable and predictable process. And I think that we do pretty well in Vergennes, but I think that would be something to consider as a proactive step, just to try to get an idea in terms of the direction that people are coming from and not necessarily looking at just putting a warm body in a chair.
Would you mind serving as the interviewing chair?
Not at
Along
all.
with Mel, and you select another person. It could be a council person or a citizen,
I
or,
would,
or even a member of the DRB, or,
That's what I would.
So-
yeah, I think it should be.
Either one or one
Yeah,
off
the chair
each.
of each
Yep,
board, so it'd be
yep.
Mel, myself, and the chair of each board.
Okay.
Absolutely.
good deal. And so we have an individual
Okay,
that needs interviewing,
we'll schedule an interview.
okay? Good deal, thank you for the recommendation, David.
You're welcome.
So we're gonna go to 6C, interest allocation policy. We're gonna table that for now.
You can table it for now. I actually, one of the things I'm gonna be having Joan do, I didn't wanna bother her with a 53rd email today, but we actually, one of the things that we do need to do is address interest, and what actually is a little handy is to actually have the growth that we did have on all of our investments. So one of the things that would be helpful here, Joan, is once we get the new statements from MBS, I think it is, we can actually put together a report. One of the things I think that we probably should have been doing for this meeting is we are supposed to be giving the board a report of watershed earnings. I think it's in June, so we probably missed that, but we'll put together kind of a comprehensive report of all of the various funds and how much money they've earned over the last fiscal year, and that should, help us, move into this allocation policy that I've been talking about. It's not the end of the world. We do budget interest earnings for the general fund, the fire fund, and the sewer fund. Those items, even though sometimes you see interest showing up in your budget reports, those really aren't the final numbers. They're just journal entries that have been put in there, and then once the earnings finally shows up, there's a journal entry that shows what has actually been allocated. I just think in advance or at the same time that the board is looking at this interest allocation policy, you ought to see really what Joan does or what I do, and just get a more global view of all of our investments and what they've done over the past year. And like I say, I'm not sure if there's a specific action the board takes, but I think certainly relative to the watershed fund, Joan, I think we do have to, maybe we project it, but I mean, we should bring that number to the city council so that they determine that 75% share.
Right.
So we'll have a report for you, along with a potential interest allocation policy
Okay.
at the next meeting.
And you mentioned the watershed shed fund. I forgot to ask, how much do we give to the committee for the fishing derby?
Well, it doesn't come out of that fund, Mike. There's a line item in the city budget under recreation program. I think in the past that budget was, $2,650, and that has been historically used to fund the fireworks donation of $500, $750 to the Legion to help both in parade expenses and the flags at veterans' grave sites. It also funds the skating rink, and there's also a $500 allocation, I'll say, if needed, for the fishing derby. All right, and I can tell you, we have not had to transfer any money into the fishing derby fund for years. It's just amazing how much money folks donate to this
fundraising
event.
activity.
It's huge.
I see some
Really.
checks being written, but
It's all, it has come in now. One of the reasons, obviously, as you approach the event, you have to do some predicting of donations, and you also have to place some orders of prizes, all right? And so there is a little risk there. And so that $500 in our budget has always been there in case our projections are off. But we haven't used it for at least the last couple of years that I've been here. And as it's turned out, I mean, there was prizes galore, and they're actually, I don't want to discourage people from donating next year, but they ended up with a surplus this year, for this year here, so that'll obviously help us next year.
Yeah.
The other thing, Mike, I talked to Michelle about this today, and when the fishing derby started, how many years ago?
27.
27 years ago, it was a group of folks that, had this idea, and it basically, I don't know how many kids were involved with the first one, but let's say it was 50, and 48 of them were Vergennes kids, okay? And so the city incorporated that into our recreation budget. Well, now there's 304 kids, and they come from Colchester to whatever, so it's not.
4 different states,
yeah,
one is
28 towns, they keep track of all this stuff. 28 towns, 4 different states. So it's not a little Vergennes fishing derby any longer, and therefore, I'm not at all opposed that if they run a little short, if the city's got to, pitch in $100 or whatever to balance the books, it's okay, but it's not a Vergennes event any longer. And so I think the committee certainly understands that it really needs to be self-supporting. We'll sponsor it, but it really needs to be self-supporting because, Vergennes shouldn't be the only one ponying up some money, but it's
No, they said that,
it's amazing,
they said that there was money coming in, people were just donating money.
Yeah.
All weekend, they were just donating. T-shirts were, $8 for a T-shirt. I mean, that's cheap.
Yeah.
And the staff members bought all their own T-shirts, so it was not part. Michelle said, we need some things. So they went out and bought radios. Well, the radios are gonna be stored at City Hall for next year. They bought a little pop-up tent, a canopy type stuff, because they need a place to get in under, stay dry when they're doing stuff. That's gonna be stored and there for years to come. So they're doing all the right things. And she says, well, we got some money left over. I says, well.
That's not a bad thing.
That's not a bad thing. No, we can find a home for it. You won't lose it. And that's definitely gotta, be communicated with her so that, and the committee, that what does come in will not be going to the general fund.
There is a separate fishing derby fund.
Yeah,
I can't
it's a
remember how much
reserve.
money, $600 or something in it, so none of the money, any excess money stays in that fund and can be used in future years.
Super. Now we're gonna come to Mel's good news and bad news.
Oh, good news and bad news.
Item number 7.
Yeah, I will talk a little bit about maybe delinquent taxes a little bit in the budget thing, but the good news is that our delinquent taxes are in very, very good shape. And on a comparison basis, a year ago, we ended the fiscal year with $55,000 and some change in delinquent taxes. And as of today, from this year, we just have just a handful of 2008. We have $41,000. So in these times, our delinquent taxes have actually dropped by $14,000 from last year to this year. And so obviously we're plugging away at that. The bad news is the sewer delinquents are concerning. And if you saw in the newspaper, I did put 4 properties up for tax sale, 2 for property taxes, and one of them we do plan on working out an arrangement, so that one will avoid that. The other one I think is probably headed towards foreclosure, so the bank there is a sizable mortgage on the property, so the bank will likely pick that up. We have 2 other properties that I put up for tax sale for non-payment of sewer, and both of those properties had outstanding sewer going back to 2006, and that really is not something that we can afford to do, and so I did put those 2 up. I'll use the word unfortunately. One of them, probably 3 days after I put the tax sale notice in the newspaper, we received papers that they had filed for bankruptcy, and when that occurs, you have to cease action. So obviously, we won't receive the money on that particular account until until the bankruptcy is settled. So letters have gone out to everyone, delinquent taxes and delinquent sewers, relative to, in essence, our policy, if you will, that we not allow folks to go beyond 90 days. We really, one of the problems in the sewer is that the revenues are matching the expenses, and therefore it really cannot absorb delinquency. So we're having to crack down a little bit in that regard. Folks are responding. I can tell you, folks with sewer bills, when they see a notice in the newspaper about somebody being up for tax sale for non-payment of sewer, and they have a delinquent sewer bill in their hand, and they think, well, maybe I better go to City Hall and talk to Mel about that. So anyway, it's working. So hopefully we'll get that really more in line, because it is a little bit out of control. So that's good. It's kind of the bad news, but I think it'll be better. I think it'll get better, Mike, when we take care of it.
I think going from 55 down to 41 is a giant step. So very good.
Yeah, I mean, I can.
In these times.
Yeah, it really is impressive. I mean, obviously, we put we do a billing every month. There's letters that go out. I mean, we're diligent about collecting it, but I can tell you from a percentage standpoint, you bill out $3 million, and at this point have $41,000. There's not too many businesses that have a better percentage than that one there, I would think. So people in Vergennes are actually very, very good.
Okay. Any other things you want to cover?
No, I'm happy to answer any question about projects, but I'm really geared towards budget, Mike, to be honest with you.
I heard some rumblings at I forgot what meeting I was at, but they said the train station is going to move sometime within the next 2 years.
The train station bid should be, actually, they can't put anything out to bid unless they have all their permits, and they're kind of hard to believe that a project that was conceived 8 years ago that they don't have all their permits, but there are a couple of permits. All right, 12. All right, who's counting? All right, Andy, you're counting. But anyway, I can tell you there was originally a target that the bids were going to go out on June 23rd. All right, but of course the state will not allow itself to put something out to bid unless it has the permits in hand. All right, well, these 4 permits that are required are in process, and so it looks like the bid for moving the train station will not go out until the middle of July. And obviously the real concern is winter's coming. You can't bid this project out you can get to a point where you actually have bid it out too late. You need to dig a hole, move it, build a foundation, lower the building onto the foundation. That's basically the first phase of this project. So, I haven't, in essence, tossed in the towel on this one, Mike. But I can tell you Diane and I and Bob McNary, we actually had our own meeting the other day, out without V-Trans representatives, without S2 architecture, so that we could kind of work on this project and give some direction and follow up on things. So we're Bob's been doing this for 12. Bob McNary's been doing this for 12 years, and he's had it. I've been dealing with it for 12 months, and I've had it. I really hope that you're going to see this thing move this year. To me, I don't think there's any reason why it shouldn't. I really think the money's there. There's not a heck of a lot of work for V-Trans to get these final permits in place. So some of the permits are their own, Mike. They V-Trans has to apply to itself for a permit. That really shouldn't be an issue. It would seem. So, no, I'm not, and I am a betting man, but I am not betting on this one.
Not when it comes with the state, right? Okay. Any questions of Mel about anything else? If not, we'll go to new business, and you see it listed on there as Sam Fishman Swimming Pool fees, waivers, and special exemptions.
Yeah,
I'm gonna jump right to Mel on this one.
Yeah, and as Joe mentioned, I think there is a need to, for Joe to lead up a committee here dealing with not only any of these special exemptions, but, not that I'm looking forward to the pool closing, but I think it'd be good, Joe, that once we do once the pool closes, we'll have a year's worth of information. I think we get the transition team back together, you and I and Linda and Roland and Kitty and Kim, and look back and see, how to go, and along with that, that group, can, look at rates again, and at the same time, take a look at exemptions. But we do have some things that have come up. Joan and I, we really live in a world of, you guys set the tax rates and we send the bills and we collect them, and you set the sewer rates and we send the bills and you collect them, and the state sets the dog license fees and Joan collects them, and Joan and Melissa collect them, and, that's the world that we live in. It's not a lot of flexibility out there, but relative to the pool, there are some past practices, and I think that when the transition group was working, we didn't know everything that we were going to run into. That's why it's called transition, and we actually have run into a few things, and I have a recommendation that I'd like the city council to approve, and I'm going to work this from the bottom up. Relative to the John Graham shelter, in the past, the residents of the shelter, and I'm talking about the residents, I'm not talking about the management or any employees at the shelter, but those residents that are there at the shelter because they need shelter. In the past, there's been a family pass issued to those residents, if you will, and that pass has been paid for by a church, but if they've paid the family pass, all right, so they've paid $95 for certainly more than a single family, so I would like the board to authorize for this year a continuance of that, the issuance of that pass. Relative to the Mary Johnson Summer Recreation Program, this is a program that runs from June 21st to August 13th. There's 85 kids between the ages of 6 and 12 that register for this program. It does cost parents $130 to send their kid to this summer rec program. In the past, the Mary Johnson, what happens is that typically 4 days out of the week, even though there's 85 kids that register, there's typically about 60 kids that go every day. Obviously, some of the kids that have registered, the parents have a vacation, so it's not like you have 85 there every day, but let's say you've got 60 kids that routinely go there. 4 days out of the week, the three groups, the 60 kids are divided into 3 groups, and 4 days of the week they go to the pool for a couple of hours. The 5th day of the week, they go somewhere else. Obviously, if there's a thunderstorm, they aren't going to the pool. So the maximum of going to the pool is 4 days a week. Some of the kids have passes, all right, so that's not an issue, but some of the kids don't have passes. And historically, the Mary Johnson Daycare has cut a check to the Sam Fishman Pool for $1,500. And one of the things relative to our rate structure is the old rate structure for a kid. It used to have a divided rate that if you were 6 to 12, it was $1, and if it was 13 to 17, it was $2. And the new rate is $6. A kid is having just as much fun when they're 7 as when they're 17, so it's $2. And so when you do the math, it works out that really the $1,500 might not cover it, if you will, if they were to pay the $2 fee. The problem is that when they put the program together and told parents that this was the program, it was $130, it was with the understanding that the $1,500 would be sufficient. And in my talking with Ann Gleason, I'm a guy that just needs data. I can't analyze anything without data, all right? And so I told her today that I would make a recommendation to the city council that for 2010 that we honor the past practice, that we would allow this program and them to use it at $1,500. We've already instituted, they've already given us their list. We know who the kids are that have passes, and we'll be able to gather up some data so that next year In the case, in Middlebury, they have a similar program, and the way that it's done is that when they go to the pool, the parents are back billed or something, all right? And it's just that had I known more about this program back in the winter, I would have brought this to your attention. I didn't know a lot about it, and know a lot more about it today, obviously. So that's my other recommendation, is to honor that $1,500 donation, if you will, or contribution to the pool for those kids to use the pool 4 days a week. The other, I will tell you that relative to other so-called free passes, there are a number of organizations that have come forward. I don't know if it's okay for me to say this, Joan, the Ladies Auxiliary, I've already said it, so the Ladies Auxiliary has stepped forward and paid for a number of passes for a number of needy kids. Churches pay passes. The Counseling Service of Addison County pays for a number of passes. So there really is not a lot of holes in this endeavor, but there was one hole that was brought to our attention, and it deals with a kid whose father is in Afghanistan. And I'm sure there's somebody would pay that bill, but we would like to make an exemption for kids who has a parent that is in the military. So those are really the three that I can think of, Joan, that I think that would carry us through for this year.
Actually, there's 4.
One of the things that we can do is, if we get other requests, we can forward them on to someone, and then by next year, Joe, we can take a look at that. So.
I'd ask for a motion.
I'd like to propose a motion that we accept Mel's recommendations for waivers on pool passes.
I will second that.
Open it up for discussion.
I have-
Ziggy?
Mal, when you were discussing the John Graham shelter, are you saying that they pay one flat fee and then anyone that's in there goes
That's right.
off
They pay
from
90.
that?
There currently are 15 residents, if
Yeah.
you will, at that, and so that's a big family.
Yeah.
So we have a check for $95, but obviously there's a number of families there.
Okay,
and
so it's just a
basically-
one-shot $95?
That's right.
All right,
That's right.
I just
That's the
wanted to get that in my
resident-
head.
That's the resident fee.
Did you state, Joe, this is for 2010?
Oh, no, but I can add that to
Can-
the resolution, yeah.
Okay, because then that locks it into this year, and then you guys act on future years. Okay. You accepted that as amended or
I do.
stated? Okay, any other further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of Joe's motion?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Okay, the big part of our evening. Item number B, adoption of a 2011 city budget. Before we get into that, and set the city local tax rate, whoops, excuse me, before we get into that at all, I skipped over one. We were supposed to add an 8.1 here as new business. We also have social services agreements that we need to pass around and sign. It's all right here.
Yeah, what there's actually a cover letter that I'll be signing tomorrow, and then there's 2 contracts for each agency, all right? So I'm gonna suggest that you keep the paper clip where it is, all right, and find the 2 places to sign, one on each contract.
Start at this end.
We'll start the process so that we won't have to stay too long after, but let's go ahead and get it right up to Lowell. He'll be the top man. Now we'll go back to the adoption.
Yeah, I want to pass this out, Mike, first, because this is really about the current year, but it affects decision-making, if you will, for this coming fiscal year.
We also need to talk about pay increases.
Yeah, it's all, we can do that as well, all right? One of the things I just want to let you know, I did a similar exercise to this last year, trying to forecast really what our fund balance was, and it is a little difficult because we have this accrual basis of accounting, and power bills come in July, which really is for June service. You have to do a little bit of forecasting. So last year, I did a similar exercise here. You also have to try to predict how much delinquent taxes you're going to collect in the first 60 days. And I think last year, when we were working on this, we predicted that we would have a year-end fund balance of around $75,000, and we actually ended the year with a fund balance of $82,233. What this is here, it is a slightly different report, but I think it's certainly a lot easier for me to read. And you know, if I came to you and showed you that I had a projected deficit, I would be pretty embarrassed, to be honest with you. But I don't want to say that I'm embarrassed about this, but I can tell you we had one hell of an easy winter in this community. You know, when you have a public works budget that goes under budget by $90,000, you had a pretty easy year. So let me try to just walk you a little bit through this little spreadsheet. And in the upper left-hand corner, and this is only about the general fund, the budgeted revenues of that 1.5 million, and then your actuals, which correspond with the first page of the budget report, you know, taxes, recording fees, you know, mileage aid, pilot, you know, the payment of lieu of taxes. You can see that during this current fiscal year that's going to end in a day, we ended up with over $43,000 worth of revenues in excess of budget. All right, and that's a lot. Much of that is due to police fines. I'll be right up front with you, but also, you know, I think we kind of predicted that maybe the legislature would cut state aid to mileage aid in the middle of the year, and that didn't occur, and pilot stayed intact, and you know, zoning fees were a little up, and you know, anyway, we ended up with a strong revenue sheet. So our revenues were $43,000 in excess of budget. And then you go over to the right, and that's really our general fund expenses. And as you can see, you take administration, police, public works, general expenses, and what that really is our fire contract, our contribution to the library, ACTAR. A lot of those contributions are contained within that $143,000, and then of course your voter approvals. And so you can see that the budgeted expense was 1.543 million, and we ended up at this point as of today. And I did a budget report today, and so yours is just a few days behind mine. I did one today. Joan did a deposit earlier, so I'm really dealing with the most up-to-date information. But as of today, we are under expenses by $115,000. Okay, so the point is here, if your revenues are $43,000 ahead and your expenses are $115,000 behind, that thing starts cranking out to $200,000. We also keep in mind that we used $25,000 to keep the tax rate stable, and as it turned out, we didn't even use any of that. You know, we actually, that same $82,000 that was there on June 30 is still there. So if you look at how much money we took in and how much money we spent, we actually took in $133,000 more than we spent. We had $82,000 starting the year, so that totals $215,000. Now, keep in mind that on the revenue side, the way that we calculate our revenues is that it assumes that everybody is paying their tax bill, and that's not really the work. So that top line of actuals, the $1,289,000, is based on what Joan bills for taxes. It's not based on what she collects. So you have to deduct the $41,000 because that's what the delinquency is today. But you can add in what I believe we're going to collect within the first 60 days. All right. So based on my calculations, if the fiscal year were to end today and we didn't have any more bills, we have a projected fund balance of almost $200,000. And, you know, when I ran this calculation, the first thing I did was to get Joan in my office and saying, this is a lot of money here. You know, how did we get in such good shape, all right? And if you peel the onion and look at, well, it's because of this, and it's because of this, and it's because of this, and because of this, the numbers add up to $195,000. I will tell you that there are some bills that will be coming in the first part of July that relate to June expenses. And I'm going to say that number is probably going to be in the vicinity of $10,000, maybe $15,000 at the top, okay? So the point is that I'm projecting a fund balance of $180,000. So what do we do? And there's one of the things that I had originally hoped to do. I actually bid out the pavement of Comfort Hill and Ice House Court, and that I was hoping that job would at least get started by the end of June, and that didn't occur. So one of the things that I would like the city council to do would be to take a pretty, you know, I don't want to say a huge chunk, but a measurable chunk of that $180,000 and allocate it to highway improvements. In the budget that I put together for the board, it called for increasing the highway, paving work from, I believe, 65 to 85. I think that number from 85, I really feel it should go somewhere in the vicinity of $150,000. That's correct. All right, so using an additional $65,000, bringing that paving budget to $150,000. That's one of the things I'd like to do. It's possible that we can even do more. That's correct. Take an additional 65 out of that there. The other thing that Mike and I have had some conversation with is nowhere in this budget is there any wage increases at all. All right, and I know last year the board did allocate some money for wage increases, and I would really I leave that with the city council. I would look to the city council to authorize pay increases. Last year it was an across-the-board increase. I'd prefer that the council not authorize an across-the-board pay increase, but to authorize up to some percentage, be it 2% or 3%, which would be adjusted based on performance as opposed to some cost of living across the board. So I know, Mike, you and I talked maybe early in the day about 2, and I think that there's some instances where something more than 2. One of the things, if I look at performance, I will tell you that folks working for the city are carrying a higher load. Less Champagne got done. We didn't replace less Champagne. Right? Obviously, members of the Public Works crew are carrying a higher load. Right? Taking on the pool. Right? Joan has taken on a higher load. She hasn't complained to me about it. She may be complaining to others, but she hasn't complained to me. That's a workload that's fallen on her shoulders. All right. Payroll, Mike, you've seen payroll. We're paying 16 more people than we used to pay, so Joan has to absorb that work in there. Also, our system is not really efficient about collecting $1 here and $2 there, but Joan has to get all of that money into the system. So there's some examples that we've reduced staff and the work doesn't go away. And I would like to think that we would have some money to, in essence, provide for performance for increased workload. So I know Mike and this is not a table pounder for me. Mike and I talked about 2%. We may have even chatted about 3. but it's really something that we can work with to, for the budget to afford, to give some additional increases for performance. If you wonder what that means, you know, our wages, our city wages are probably around $750,000, or the total wage, well, actually, it's about $900,000 with a pool. But that includes the Bixby Library. We pay, I think, around $900,000 in wages over the course of the year, which includes pool people and Bixby Library people. So there's about $750,000. So if you think about, you know, some dollar figure, if you allocated an additional 2%, there is overhead, obviously, Social Security, workers' compensation, retirement. So you can't just take 750 and multiply it 2% and have that equal 15,000. You know, the 2% probably is more like $20,000. So what I would like would be for the board to, in essence, authorize some percentage, and then we would obviously have to adjust that budget.
That authorization, I'd ask that it go to both Mel and I. You authorize me to enact upon Mel's salary and Joan's salary, and then he has the permission to authorize on everybody below him. The people report to him, and I want him to manage that.
So how do we get involved with Mel's and Joni's? Do we have a group, or?
I have started writing Mel's and Joni's, taking some notes, and I would like, if people would like to serve on a committee and do it that way, or if you just want to take and send me an email. By the way, I did get your email, came tonight.
It did.
Yep.
I think that, I'm not a big fan of annual increases or cost of living increases. I think they're nothing more than a Christmas gift in the middle of the summer. Performance-based increases, I think, are a good thing. I think you pay for performance, and there's a significant benefit to retaining qualified employees, and I think that that's what we have here in the city of Vergennes. I would certainly go along with up to a 3% increase based on Mel's perspective. And I would go further, and I don't necessarily believe we need a committee with regard to Joan and Mel, but again, I would trust Mike to take our input via email or other secure communication and act on that, up to 3% for those two positions as well.
Second.
So does that, excuse me, well, this is discussion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the pay increase. Now we'll open it up to discussion.
Concentrating on this and listening too, I can't do both. So this 3%, I got most of it is, but then you said something about, you know, doing the work that the extra work, is that including in this 3%? In other words, the max you possibly can get is 3%?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to get that in my head.
And part of the discussion we had that started out at 2% is, you know, we're good financially, but we've had a lot of different things that have played role.
Oh, yeah,
We're
I know.
$90,000 because we had a good year and didn't have to buy a bunch of salt. There's some other things that are in the move here. So it's, you know, there's other people that is losing 3%. As of this weekend, I'm getting 3% less.
Joe?
Yeah. And
I wish it was 3%.
so, and some other people aren't getting any increase. So,
I haven't had an increase in a long time.
yeah. So I think it's generous. I think it's generous. At least we're able to do something. So that's my 2 cents. Any other comments?
You know, the other piece of it is I think that, you know, we have to also look at what we're getting relative to the institutional knowledge that some of these long-term employees bring to the city of Vergennes. You know, you look in the Public Works Department, and those guys are able to go far above and beyond what we would get bringing somebody in new. And I think that it's important, you know, you look at it relative to where, you know, where somebody is in other industry, and we have to remain competitive. And I think 3% is a good number.
Something that we do need to do at some point is do a salary analysis to see where We are.
Yeah, actually, Mike,
We had talked about that.
for me, I mean, the Vermont Town and City Managers Association does a pay and benefits. I have that sitting on my desk and share that with anybody, and actually I'm about, I wonder if my deadline is July 1, I hope it's not, but anyway, there's another one for all other position that I know you've seen it before, David, before. There's actually a salary survey done by the league for all employees, so I mean, if anybody ever wants some late night reading, take a look at that. It actually is a great document. It isn't just about salary, it's about salaries and benefits and vacation time and, you know, those types of things. So it's really a comprehensive document that I'll play the library and, you know, issue that out to folks and pass it around. It's really a good document. One of the things, you know, relative to, you know, this is just such a strong fund balance here. If I do the math, if I were to do the math, if the board were to authorize, you know, the pay increases and that adjustment in the public works budget, you know, I can tell you it still leaves $100,000 on the table with if the board intends to keep the tax rate stable, all right? And you know, one side of me says, you know, maybe we could use some of that money to reduce the rate. And of course, you know, nobody remembers a rate reduction. They only remember when it comes up. But you know, so you know, one of the things to think that where we're going to see a year, you know, where we had such an easy winter, you know, I try to look at this kind of longer term, you know. Last year, we ended the year with $82,000. We were going to use $25,000 of it to keep the tax rate stable. The other thing that I neglected to say, Christine, was the original budget that I put together for you. Now that grievance is done and I calculate the tax rate, the current tax rate, it actually needs $31,000. Okay. So if you think that, let's say that this thing is going to end at 180, all right? So what happens to 180? Well, 31 of it in my original proposal, which was modified a little bit because of the recycling. Okay, so call that 30, all right? So now you're down to 150. We talked about $65,000 being used to increase the highway budget, all right? So that gets us down to 85, right? If you're going to use, you know, up to 3%, I'm going to say that's around $20,000. So basically, that leaves you with, I'll use the word a cushion of $55,000. I think if my math is correct. Is it 65? So if it's 180 minus 30, I'll go with the 31. That gets you down to 149. All right, we said an additional 65 for paving, all right? That gets you down to 84. And if you have 20,000 for wages, that gets you down to 64, all right? And if you think about it, last year, you know, we ended the year with 82,000 and we used 25,000 to keep the rate stable, right? So the difference between those numbers was basically our cushion. And the cushion, you know, I call it a cushion because I don't have another word to use it. I mean, we never know what kind of a winter we're going to have, all right? And you know, if we're out of salt and if it's snowing, we buy salt. You know, I mean, we don't have an option. So you really do need to have some kind of a cushion in here. And I don't think that $64,000 is is too much or too little of a cushion.
Last year, you say?
We had a cushion of the difference between 82 and 25. We used $25,000 of the $82,000 to hold the tax rate stable. So that was our cushion. Now, as it turned out, we didn't even need the 25 because we had such a good year. So we can keep the tax rate stable, do everything that we've talked about, and still maintain a cushion of $64,000.
Sounds good to me.
How much?
Sure.
So 180,
Yep.
took away, what was the 30?
Well, the original budget that I put together to the city council required $31,000 of a fund balance. It required it. All right, now what will, and of
So
course,
that was the existing fund balance for,
my original proposal to the city council when I put the budget together, to keep the tax rate stable, required using $31,000 of whatever the fund
Okay.
balance was going to be.
And then,
okay?
so that brings it down to
At 149.
149. And you
all right?
used 65 for paving?
Then you need to use 65 more, yeah,
Okay, doesn't that bring it down
to 84, yeah,
Yeah,
How much money were you using for your salaries?
20.
20, okay, I thought that was for 2%, not 3%. You used the figure $20,000 when you were talking about 2%.
Well,
originally
one of
said
the
it was
things, yeah,
15.
relative to wages, you know, it isn't just
Yeah,
wages,
Yeah,
because
but
it
that's why I was
covers,
wondering how you didn't get down, how you just got down to 64 rather than
why is that?
a little further.
well, relative to wages, you know, let's say if you had 750,000 and you needed 2%, if you were gonna say, listen, we're not gonna do all 3%, all
Is
right?
15,000.
Well, one of the things relative to wages, full-time employees, obviously social security, 7.65, workers' compensation, depending on what
Right.
department, there's
So
another
it's
8.
just at 2%, you're at 20.
What's that?
That's
2% would be 15.
I know, but then
750
with all the other benefits you said.
has to get you to 20 because you have retirement.
But you're gonna give more to people, so my point would be less than 64 left over.
Only because of people that are getting the 3%.
Because the people are gonna get more than 2%.
Yeah,
That's what I don't understand, because you'll end up with less than 64.
There's also-
If you get more than 2%
Right.
raises.
There's also the fact that not all employees work for the general fund. You know, some employees work for the sewer fund, and so that's not reflected in this,
Or the
number.
pool, or the Bixby, or
What's that?
For the
the
pool.
public works employees, and
Public works employees,
administration,
police and administration, yes, yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
most,
Right, I mean, I haven't done, you know, I mean, the discussion, obviously, Andy, that Mike and I had at, 7:05 this morning, or yesterday morning, I think it was.
I'm not trying to be
All right.
difficult, I just didn't understand.
Yeah, I mean, actually, what ends up happening is that when there's a wage adjustment, that $20,000, it hits about 23 line items in the budget. And basically, if the city councils, with their understanding that basically we get to this 20,000, we're leaving at 64, I need to spread all of that, all of those costs across all those lines to
It'll
get
be
to
roughly
that.
$20,000.
Correct.
Okay.
In the general fund,
So
in the general fund.
last year we had a cushion. What did we do with that cushion?
Still got it.
You still have it, so
well,
that
it's-
cushion plus
It
this?
just all it is just moves forward.
Oh, it keeps going
Just moves
forward and forward. So that includes.
It's a part of that 64.
Okay,
It's not
that's
in
what-
addition to that.
That's
say.
what I wanted to get in my
Correct.
head here.
Right,
All right, so it's part of the 64.
that's correct, because that cushion is right there, that 82,333,
All right,
that was the fund balance.
okay,
And we intended to use 25,000 of the 82. We didn't use any of it.
all right.
That 82 is still, as it turned out, was still sitting right there because our revenues exceeded budget and our expenses were less than budget. So we intended to use 25 of it, we used none of it.
Okay, and that's part of that, all right.
So what is our bottom line budget number? What are we voting on for a budget? 1 million?
Yeah, I think that I think that you're really only going to be able to vote on the rate, Christine, and then I will come back with all of those numbers distributed into the budget. So in essence, I guess the easy part, I think I can answer the question. If you add you add $65,000 to the public works budget, you add $20,000, but I can't give you an individual budget. That's general fund, all right? So if if you go to on your original budget that I sent to you, you had a gross budget of 1.5 million. If you add those two numbers, the 85,000, that's your number. That's the number that I have to get to. You have a budget there? Yep. No, that's a budget report. I'm talking about
Oh, this budget? No.
The working budget.
been working
Yeah.
on.
So probably 25? Yeah.
So when I originally put this general fund budget in front of you, you had a budget of $1,602,918. And if you add the 65,000 for highways and 20,000 for wage adjustments in the general fund, you just add that to that number. So it should be $1,687,918. I think it's a little different than that because I also changed recycling. Christine, there was a couple other minor changes that we, I think that actually there was two other changes that we made. One was recalculating the fire contract and the other was recalculating the recycling. So there's a slight modification there, not a lot.
So for estimation purposes, it'll be just under 1.7 million.
Correct.
When it all
Yep.
shows- when it all shows.
General fund.
Yeah,
General fund.
Compared to last year.
So I know, sewer's different.
Compared to last year's of 1.543. So, oh yeah, it's going up, but obviously, why is it going up? Well, when you're taking a major fund balance and putting it into highway improvement, that's where the money's going.
So how do we establish our tax rate?
The tax rate is 60, your current rate is 60.3 cents. And how that's derived is the city rate is 58 cents, and then the so-called local rate, Joan, is that what it's called? Yeah. The local rate, I believe, is 2.3 cents, and that is due to the tax exemption for the Masonic Hall, Vergennes Masonic Hall, and also that covers the education portion of the taxes resulting from the voters' approval of the $40,000 exemptions for veterans as opposed to 10. That 30,000, when somebody is a veteran, a disabled veteran, their assessment drops by $40,000. $10,000 is grandfathered, and $30,000 has to be recovered by the community to go to the education fund. So that's that 2.3 cents covers lost education funds that the city pays to Montpelier to, in essence, replenish the education fund for those two voter approvals, if you will. The voters approved the exemption for the Vergennes Masonic Hall, and the voters approved the exemption, the increase in exemption for veterans from 10, which went to 20, which went to 40. So we pay that $30,000 delta. So that would leave that rate, Mike, at the current level of 60.3.
So this is the only, like the John Graham shelter and the ag buildings, do we?
Those are the John Graham shelter. The John Graham shelter is exempt by statute. That's not a voter approval exemption.
Right.
The rescue squad, is a voter approval exemption, but there's a special law whereby voter-approved exemptions for rescue squads and fire departments, the state does not recapture the educational tax on rescue squads and fire and independent fire companies.
So the other buildings like the Hawkins, they were bought out?
They pay.
Would they pay? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Do you know the school?
We don't, and it's funny, Andy would know better than me, right? The school rates are not available yet, right?
I called Ferrisburg either yesterday or the day before to ask if they had been able to set their tax rate, and they said that they were going to be in until the end of this week, and they hope be able to set their tax rate. They know what their local rate will be, but
They
they're hoping to get their school information at the end of the week to say.
They give it to you right on June 30th, and not a minute before.
One other variable that is still existent on our end is the listers did hold grievance. They've made all of their decisions. And those notices will go out in the mail tomorrow. They're on my desk. There was 11 properties that filed a grievance. They obviously have an opportunity to appeal to the Board of Civil Authority. So obviously, if those property owners do take an appeal, and if their appeal is successful, then obviously that does reduce our tax revenue there. And of course, what ultimately ends up happening is that if we lose $1,000, then what happens is that $64,000 drops to 63.
Good job.
Go ahead, Randy.
Didn't we had a motion about did we want to separate the payroll?
We gotta take and do the motion, on pay increase.
Or can we
I thought
roll it
we had
all in
done it.
by adding the rate to
No,
it?
sets tax rate separate from anything else.
But we do have a motion on,
Yes.
on the raise.
Raises for up to 3%
And
for
it would,
performance.
and again, it would be to authorize Mel to deal with his employees and for me to deal with, the council's employees. Any other further discussion on the pay increase? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried.
And I'll make the motion that we set the tax rate at 60.3 cents.
Second.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Randy?
Do we need to make a motion to move the money for paving? Or is that just included?
I think I think the budget number should be there. I wish I had it for you, Christine, exactly. You know, I mean, I could figure it, I think it's $1,200 less.
I'll give you a couple of days.
Okay.
Just email me.
Okay. Then I don't have to make a motion.
That will reflect in the next report.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all city employees for all their hard work over the last year, especially Mel and Joan for the fine job that they've done and the added responsibilities that Joan has picked up as far as the pool and all the help Mel's been through this whole process with the pool and everything else that he's been doing. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Mike. You know, I look back at the goals of what I agreed to do over the course of the year, and I think I only did 1 out of the 5.
I know, that's gonna show in your review.
Yeah, I know. But, you know, I tell you, I've been busier hell. It didn't, I don't think there was anything in there about the swimming pool, but anyway.
Nope. Any other points that anybody wants to bring up before we adjourn? If not, I'd ask for a motion. Motion by Ziggy, seconded by Lowell. All those in favor? Aye. So carried.